if he is someone who brings a breath of normalcy and fresh air to proceedings, that might just swing enough.
Let's turn to US politics now as we review the week's news, where Kamala Harris has chosen the little-known governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, as her running mate. He's 60. He's a former teacher. He previously served in the Army National Guard. He's also, helpfully for the Democrats, a man from rural white America, although Donald Trump will probably claim he'd never been white before and has only just turned white. Libby, what do you make of the choice of Tim Walz?
Well, it's difficult really because he has sort of quite conventional views, I think, and he has a reputation as a teacher, I think, for being very kind and supportive, and people seem to have liked him. But I just don't feel I know enough yet. You know, you really have to wait till you see the whites of their eyes. That tends to happen over a period of time. But no, I think it's interesting. I quite like the accusation of his opponents as being weird. I like the idea of weirdness being branded as something you should watch in people. I was just talking about Musk and feeling he's not quite well.
It's an interesting point, isn't it, John, about... Because Tim Walz has had a remarkable political kind of rise to fame. 2 weeks ago, barely anyone even within the States had heard of him. I don't think many of us really had heard of him a couple of weeks ago. Now he's the Democratic vice presidential nominee, and part of the reason he's risen to prominence is because he went on the media with this attack line against the Republicans of, these guys are just weird, which is a different way of going after them. You know, a lot of Democrats had tried this whole they're a threat to democracy thing that sounded very grandiose, and different people will have different opinions as to whether that's true or not. But he's right, isn't he? I mean, you know, J.D. Vance caring so much about how your kids are conceived is a bit weird. The fact that Donald Trump has never seemingly laughed naturally is a bit weird.
I mean, this is it. It shouldn't... It's almost like we've had a collective sort of mask taking off, that suddenly Walz has turned around and said, have you actually clocked these guys? And he I think Libby's right. As a teacher, some teachers do have that ability to sort of talk straight. And he gave his brilliant sort of acceptance speech with Kamala Harris behind him when he sort of took it to J.D. Vance and was saying, I'll debate you anytime, and then threw in the joke, you know, if you can get off the couch, and everyone roared with laughter, because if listeners are aware of the J.D. Vance couch allegations, if not, do look it up. And you're right. It's a bit like it's playground bully stuff, isn't it? Where suddenly, if you say the bullies are weird, everyone suddenly turns on the bully. Then suddenly you see Trump is rattled by this accusation of weirdness. For me, this should be just the start. You know, the people should have been picking up on this in 2016 when he was running the first time, and all the stuff came out about him then. Now we know he's a convicted criminal. He has arguably sparked an insurrection. He's done a speech recently where he literally told his own voters, if you vote for me, you'll never have to vote again, i.e. I'm going to close down democracy. And these are weird is like a baseline word for what's going on. But if that's the way it takes... I mean, thinking in America, 40% of people are going to vote Republican anyway. If the candidate was a dog, they'd vote Republican. And likewise with the Democrat, if the candidate was a dog, they'd vote... It's all about these swing voters. So if Walz, you know, is 60 or spring chicken... compared to a lot of these, you know,
very young for American politics.
Absolutely, you know, if he is someone who brings a breath of normalcy and fresh air to proceedings, that might just swing enough.
Normalcy is a key word. I heard someone, Libby, say that the thing that American voters are craving is new and normal, because they're used to the same old figures, many of whom are eccentric to say the least. And Tim Walz is relatively new. Most people hadn't heard of him. And he is very normal. He looks very normal. He just looks like your average middle American.
I love the way that this sort of anxious assault on weirdness is coming from somebody who spent so much time with a bin on his head.
Listen, you see, I put my weirdness in a bin, literally. And if only everyone else in politics did that, Libby, I think we'd be in a better place, don't you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when I look for something wholesome and normal, I absolutely do look towards current bin faces.
I'm going to put that on my poster.
But it's interesting, you see, because we do have an innate mistrust of weirdness until it gets branded as eccentric brilliance. You see, Boris Johnson definitely is weird, and he got quite a long way. Russell Brand got quite a long way in showbiz before turning out he was possibly that bit too weird. You know, sometimes people can kind of capitalise on it. The weirdness of Trump, in a way, has been part of his strength. You know, people think he comes from somewhere else. You know, he has come to save them, maybe. But I think one tires of it. You know, you really do want something rather straightforward. And I think the straightforwardness of our present Prime Minister is strangely soothing. You know, I'd be a bit worried if he suddenly started, you know, I don't know,
But what about maybe
skateboarding or breakdancing or
or
something
encouraging
like
people to drink bleach to deal with a virus, Libby? That kind of weird.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that yes, that bit of the Trump. The Trump weirdness was great, but no, people use it. I mean, people want to be distinctive. This is the problem. People are desperate to be distinctive. That's why Harold Wilson had the pipe. Even though he actually preferred cigars. That's why. That's why sort of people get their sort of branding, and sometimes the branding just goes that bit too far. And Waltz has kind of no branding except for people saying untrue things about sofas. We say that we call them sofas in this country, by the way, Americans.
Indeed, yeah. It's sofa, not couch on this side of the pond. Talking of weird US politicians, we do have to talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Because this week he admitted to dumping a dead bear cub in Central Park. Now, this all came to light in an interview he did with Roseanne Barr, of all people, in a video posted on Twitter. I'll try and briefly tell this story, but it's quite the story, so bear with me. He says he was out falconing about 10 years ago. He saw a woman in a van in front of him hit and kill a bear cub. Here's what RFK Jr. said in his own words. He says, "So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and I put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear. And it was in very good condition. And I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator. And you can do that in New York State. You can get a bear tag for roadkill bear." He says the falconing day then went on longer than expected. He had to go straight to a dinner in New York City. That too ran late. Kennedy said he then realised he had to go to the airport and wouldn't be able to go home first. Then he picks up the story. "And the bear was in my car. And I didn't want to leave the bear in the car because that would have been bad," he said. "So then I thought, at that time, this was a little bit of the redneck in me. There'd been a series of bicycle accidents in New York. They'd just put in the bike lanes, and so a couple of people were getting killed, and it was every day, and people badly injured every day. It was in the press." He said, "I wasn't drinking, of course, but people were drinking with me who thought this was a good idea." So then he decided he would get an old bike. He had an old bike in his car. Somebody asked him to get rid of. He said, "Let's put the bear in Central Park, and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike." And then when RFK Jr. woke up the next day, the discovery of his dead bear cub was on all the local TV news channels. I mean, Libby, this was a man who until recently was polling over 10% in the presidential polls. What are we to make of this?
I was about to say something a bit sexist there. About the whole thing being a very bloke manoeuvre. I don't usually put roadkill in my car in the hope of skinning and eating it later. Even if that's possibly because I'm a lady. I don't know. I'm sorry. I defer to Count Binface here. Is this a male thing? Is this something that men want? It could be. The killer thing, like that rather weird lawyer who hit a fox with a baseball bat or something one Christmas and upset everybody. Is the killing of animals kind of necessary to your masculinity?
Well, Count Binface, being an alien from Sigma 9, would never go around beating up furry animals, running them over, anything like that, because he knows that there's a large portion of votes by not doing that. But if we want to be, we could look at women who've done something similar. There was a story recently about the Republican governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, who shot her 14-month-old dog Cricket because she was a bad hunting dog.
And admitted this.
Yes, admitted it.
Put it in a book.
That's right. And so maybe and spiked her own chances of being a VP pick as well. So there you are, Libby. The sisters can do it for themselves as well.
That is very true. That is very true.
Yes, sisters can do it.
But I would say that I think that the lawyer you referred to, I think Jolyon Moore, was that the curious thing about his case was that, and like you say, James, this Kristi Noem put it in a book.
Yeah.
Kennedy's only mentioned this because he's aware of the fact that the New Yorker apparently was going to run the
story.
But
he did do this. He's admitted he did this.
But he's spiked the story by saying, "Okay, I'll tell it in my words first because I don't want it to come out of the story." So he felt forced into describing this madness, whereas Jolyon Moore voluntarily said on Boxing Day, "How did your Christmas, Boxing Day start? I just went and killed a fox with a baseball bat."
Yes.
And the mitigating circumstances, it got trapped in sort of the wire near the hen house in his garden. He thought he was doing the right thing, and he then called the RSPCA. So I'm not aborting, but I'm just saying. But he literally admitted that publicly.
He admitted it.
This is social media again. You see, people oversharing. Whereas I think Kennedy, and same with Kristi Noem. I mean, these people, when they don't have to mention this, why would
politicians and dead animals don't mix? I mean,
yes,
Libby,
indeed.
The Jeremy Thorpe affair, the thing that people actually found most appalling about the entire thing back in the 70s was the death of Rinka the dog. Just, if you're a politician, don't go near a dead animal.